intense rains that cause extensive damage and record flooding, active hurricane seasons that keep residents on edge, coastal erosion that imperils highways and homes, extreme droughts that hurt agriculture and fuel dangerous fires. These are natural events that experts say are linked to climate change. Is Hawaii prepared? What are we doing about it? Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Laura Yamada. All right, let's start tonight's program with some sobering facts. There is more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere now than in the last 650,000 years. That's according to readings from Mauna Loa Observatory. Most of the hottest years on record have happened since 2001. That's according to weather scientists. Oceans are warming and sea levels are rising as polar ice melts, according to multiple global studies. Now, skeptics may never be convinced, but scientists are mostly in sync on the cause of all of this: us. They say human activity since the Industrial Revolution is changing our climate faster than it ever changed on its own. So tonight, we're asking, is Hawaii prepared? Joining us to discuss the question is a representative from the state, cultural and academic affairs, academic leaders, the University of Hawaii, and the local leader of a national youth movement on climate change. So we look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can call, you can email or tweet your questions, and you're also going to find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and the PBS Hawaii Facebook page. All right, now to our guests. McKenna Kaufman is the director for the UH Institute for Sustainability and Resilience. She teaches graduate courses in climate change and low carbon cities and chairs the city's Climate Change Commission. Ed Sniffen is the Deputy Director of the State Highways Division and is a regular guest on Insights. Kavika Pigram is a senior at Waipahu High School. He is also the statewide organizer for the U.S. Youth Climate Strike, which rallies students nationwide demanding action on climate change. And Malia Nobrega Oliveira is from Hanapepe Valley on Kauai. She is the director of a program called Lo'i Ani'au Maka'ala Ani'au, or LAMA, which means Climate Change, Climate Alert. We'll ask her to explain LAMA's mission in just a bit. All right, thank you again, all of you, for being here. This is one of those issues that it's just growing, I think, in intensity, which is where we need to be today, especially in a place like Hawaii. So maybe McKenna, maybe I'm going to start with you. Let's talk about, and anybody can chirp in here too, as far as what the city has identified as the biggest threats to climate change. How would you address that?
Sure. Well, so the city's Climate Change Commission, it consists of 5 members. 3 of us are at the university. The other 2 are Rosie Allegado and Chip Fletcher. Also Victoria Keener from the East-West Center, and Bettina Maynard is an architect. So the commission was put together in 2018 with the kind of, prompt to, give directives to, or guidance really, to the mayor, the departments, and city council, right? And so when we got together, we put together a climate change brief in order to say these are the major things that we see happening in climate change science and trends, and particularly what's happening in Hawaii and on Oahu, right, within the commission's sort of kuleana. And the first thing that came from the administration to say what we really need help with is sea level rise guidance. So that was kind of our first piece of work, right? There had been tons of work at the state level, really, really nice work in terms of modeling the impacts of 3.2 feet of sea level rise. But the open question is like, so how much by when, right? And that's the kind of uncertainty that's really hard to deal with in climate change science, right? It's not when is it, it's not, is it gonna be 3 feet? It's when is it gonna be 3 feet, right?
So how quickly do you react? How soon do you invest? When do you start those projects?
Yeah. And so the guidance is sort of like with the best science, kind of a planning guidance for what to plan for with the kind of a risk uncertainty aspect to it. So we said plan for 3 feet, on average by the end of century, but really we don't experience this like on average, right? We're gonna experience high tide flooding that's gonna be, more and more of a nuisance until it's a real problem much earlier than end of century, closer to mid-century.
And I think, maybe if I can jump in, when I think about sea level rise, and like you mentioned, the high tides and flooding, I mean, as salt makers on the island of Kauai, I mean, we're experiencing that now, you know. And an example of that is, you know, I would normally share when we talk about salt production and, you know, Hanapepe being the last place all in Hawaii that continues this tradition. For 6 years now, we've had, for my family alone, and there's 22 families, we've had zero production. So we would have gone from, prior to this, on a really amazing hot summer, in one harvest, maybe being able to pull out about 45-gallon buckets.
So kind of set the scene there for people who haven't been out to the area. Like,
Yeah.
what is the change that's happening? What are you seeing happening?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have these wells that are traditional wells that have been there, I mean, from my grandparents' time and even before that, for many generations. And the seawater passes through the earth and comes into our wells. And I always say, like Grandpa always said, there's a salt shelf in the area, and that's what makes the salinity levels change from if you tested right here in this puna or this well, compared it out to the ocean, which is a few 100 feet away. And it's very different. But so our wells now are starting to overflow. We're also getting, with a lot of the erosion and the compacting of sand at our nearby Salt Pond Beach Park, with these high tides, a lot of these overtopping and overwashing of waves really creates this flooding that comes right into the salt making area. So that, and you know, dealing with the puna or the wells overflowing, I mean, certain areas, I mean, we may be just at a 1-inch difference from the other ohana, the Ka'ia Kapu ohana next to us. They're not getting flooded, but we are. And so, you know, so we're also already starting to think of ways to adapt the practice. You know, some will say, just move the practice, go more up Mauka, you know, and it's like, you can't move a practice that's pili or connected to the land right there, because there's certain things that's happening in the earth that allows us to be there.
So I'm curious, actually, we're obviously going to get to the roads, we're obviously going to get to the beaches, but I'm curious some other examples that all of you have seen, you know, that maybe people aren't aware of, that are already tangible, already visible, that you're seeing in different areas that are or likely an effect of climate change. Any other thoughts?
Well, I mean, that's like an amazing example, right? In terms of this
It's
isn't in the
this
future,
is-
it's actually right now,
Yeah.
right? We're starting to see the impacts right now. It's starting to affect, you know, all kinds of different practices and services, right? And so how are we going to address that and adapt, or not be able to in some cases, right? But also Malia brings up this good point, right? It's not necessarily just, sea level rise isn't just sort of the overtopping of the ocean and onto, you know, higher into the, it's also the rising of the groundwater table, right? And so groundwater inundation is going to be a component of that that's going to affect places that sort of isn't, you know, necessarily kind of in people's mind of like, oh, that's, you know, low-lying, so it's going to
Right, you're thinking it's coming in from the ocean, not coming
not
up
coming
from
up,
under.
right? But that's going to be a really large impact.
I mean, and then to throw in another aspect or impact to our practices like this is the increase of rain. And, you know, so when we normally would think our summer season is at its hottest and its driest, that time is now shifting. You know, maybe we would normally make salt during May to October, November, but now we have to become kilo or observers who are now knowing like, hey, salt making might be only April, May or something, you know, but you really have to be in tune with your land area, your environment, and knowing what's happening, because it might change from year to year.
What else have you seen, Ed? Some other examples. I know, again, we're going to get into the roads, no doubt.
So for us, if we just don't look at the ocean side portion, we still got to look at the slopes. Everything that's above our roads. We've got great systems, or great roadway systems that were built next to the oceans, you know, for great views and great access to the communities that we have. But tied to that are roadways that are going through steep slope areas that in the past were very stable. over time they got eroded, but the more extreme events that we see more often are affecting us tremendously. In the past, we would always see when we had hurricanes or large storm event systems that came through, we knew we'd have problems with some of the areas that we have on our roadway. Now we have them on normal events because those normal events are getting bigger and bigger. And this is not just a Hawaii thing. Nationally, all of the highway system directors are looking at how we build and manage and maintain our systems.
Where we used to, we're looking at, is this Kauai that we're looking at? Yeah.
Yep. So 14 of those areas fell. 14 landslides came through that we had to clear.
14 landslides. Wow, I think I heard a couple or three, and then I was like, okay.
Exactly. So nationally, the directors are looking at making our design standards more stringent. We always design for 100-year storms. Maybe that's not enough anymore. We're seeing the 100-year storms happening more and more and more.
Well, I think it's natural for people looking at this saying, whether it's there or you think about what's happening with the poly or any of these that are just all lining the roads. I mean, it just seems like really we are at the point where anything could happen at any time. I don't mean to be an extremist, but we are seeing this. And when you think about even just those slight increments of a little more rain, a little bit of something, a little bit more saturation, where are we as far as the stability of what surrounds us?
That's exactly it. So we could take the option of securing everything, concreting everything, but that's not Hawaii anymore.
Right.
So we got to start taking those small steps to build resiliency to our day-to-day operations to see how we can protect the people, plus keep Hawaii the way it is right now.
Yeah, I think we have some video too. That one, I think it was Kalaniana Highway that we were just talking about earlier. That it's just hard to imagine when you think about just the amount of rain and sort of what we're seeing. I think, yeah, that just. I'm just still not able to wrap my brain around the fact that that's Kalaniana Highway on the east side of Oahu.
So this happened in the same time as the Kauai floods.
Right. That was which one happened first? I'm forgetting.
Both
it was
at the
almost
same time.
the same.
Yep.
Okay.
So Kauai got a lot of press on it because, I mean, and rightfully so. We broke the we broke the records on everything. But this happened at the same time. So tremendous storms came through that we never seen before on the east side.
Well, we're developing new terms to even describe it, right? The idea of a rain bomb is something that's kind of getting into the common vernacular, and we didn't have that term before.
So how do these conversations start with you, Kavika, and your friends and the people that you are now being surrounded by, a younger generation who are moving into really taking leadership roles in what's going to happen next?
Yeah, I think we're talking about big natural storms like these, flooding and kind of.
Actually, I'm going to pause you just for a second, only because I want to ask the question the way that the viewer asked the question. It's the same thing. This is the way they put it. Adults continue to debate how serious climate change is based on their own beliefs. What does the younger generation think, and are your peers divided on that? So I'm sorry, but continue. I wanted to make sure.
Actually, when we're thinking about the national conversation, it's just present in my mind right now, considering the caucus in Iowa a couple days ago. Actually, among the youth, climate change is the most pressing issue among young Republicans, as odd as it seems, and obviously among young Democrats and
expand on that a little bit.
So I think the younger generation, because 20 years ago in the year 2000, or even a couple years before that, really the conversation was, there are two paths that we can go. We can go into the climate change path where the world is getting warmer and you have these rising sea levels, increased storms, or the world's going to get really cold again and we're going to have another ice age, right? That was the debate. And even among scientists, that was still a debatable thing, even though there is still, even back then, a large consensus on climate change being real. But now, where my generation is growing up, there is that 99.9% consensus that, hey, climate change is going to happen, it's caused by us, and we have to do something about it, and it's being caused by carbon emissions that we're putting into the atmosphere. And so I think that because that is our basis of knowledge, that is where we're starting at, it's so much easier to be able to activate people in my generation to take action on climate crisis versus if we're asking people maybe from 1980, 1970, who were born in an era when we really didn't know 100% for sure what our path was going to be 100, 200 years from now. And so I think that in terms of mobilizing youth, Keiki, on taking action on climate crisis, it is exponentially easier than mobilizing somebody who's 30, 40 years old.
And then I have to turn to you, and I think we have some pictures of you, being out there and working with, our people here and people elsewhere. Just what got you? What was the trigger for? Was there a trigger for you? Was there? What was that moment where you said, "Okay, I need to take this to the next level"?
Yeah. So it was actually quite a while ago, and we were talking about earlier in the conversation about what are the effects of climate change that maybe aren't as apparent? And in the Philippines, yeah, growing up in the Philippines, where I'm from, we were hit with this typhoon called Typhoon Ondoy, which and this was in the early 2010s, and then we were also hit with Typhoon Yolanda, and in the Philippines, we're constantly hit typhoon after typhoon. It's normal. That's just the way it is. That's where we're geographically located. We're predisposed to being affected by typhoons. But even it just being a little bit worse than it was at the time before, that can kill and affect so much more people. Simply because in the Philippines, disaster preparedness is not the same as it is here in Hawaii. Right. And so I think that seeing that effect that it had, and I was safe because I was a privileged kid. I had a roof over my head. But a lot of kids that are living on the streets, when it started flooding, they didn't have a street to live on anymore. And so, seeing the effect that it had, especially on lower class people, and how disproportionately affected them compared to rich upper class citizens of the country, I think that was the big trigger for me. And then when I found the opportunity to be able to organize on behalf of those people, using my privilege to be able to give back, I think that's just, I went back and I thought about it and I was like, this is something that I have to do.
All right, so let's talk about some of the areas that really we obviously have to talk about because it's obvious. We're talking about sort of the beaches and the roads and sort of what's you're with the Highway Division. This has been debated for a long time now, and it's been tough, I would imagine, because we're talking about billions of dollars, likely. So maybe why don't we talk a little bit about some of the newer reports coming out and what the current information is that we have, and how we're able to move forward from there. So I think that you were saying that there was a recent report that came out maybe about a year ago. Did you say?
Yeah. So the state put out a sea level rise exposure area report that pretty much told us everybody's talking about what we should be planning for. Right. There was the debate on what that should be, and that pretty much put it to rest. Everybody's looking at 3.2 foot rise by the end of the century. Now it's up to us to start setting the plans in motion to ensure that we're ready for that. Now,
I'm going to stop you there for a minute. What a 3.2 foot rise, what will that look like?
So if I put it in the highways perspective, we have a belt system throughout all of our islands. And again, it was put that way because that's where all the people were. It connected all of our communities together, gave us great views of the ocean, and allowed us to move forward economically, right? But because we're out there, our 2,500 lane miles are always at risk. 20% of those roadways will be inundated by 2100. So by the year 2100, we're going to have to either relocate or elevate or abandon 20% of the roads that we have right now. That's what it looks like from the highways perspective.
I think we're showing right now Oahu.
So if we look at it that way, we got to remember that those roads were put there to service the communities that live there. That also means the communities that live at the road level, at the elevation of the road, will also be inundated. So our land use is not going to look the same in 2100 as it does right now. So for us, there's big decisions that we have to make moving forward, starting from 20 years ago. When we start looking at how we take care of this 20% of our roadways, 20% means if I relocate or elevate 20% of our roads, that means $15 billion. Definitely it's not money that we have right now. Definitely that's not money that we're gonna have in these next 20, 30 years. So we gotta make sure we start moving forward in the right way.
And so, but you're getting some, the climate, political climate right now, it's definitely changing.
Absolutely, it's tremendous. So 20 years ago, we did a shoreline protection report for DOT. We went on and took a look at all the areas that were at risk, and we put together plans to show how we take care of them. 20 years ago, we didn't do anything. We had the plans in place. We had the opportunity to put resources towards it, and we didn't. And it wasn't that I'm not criticizing anybody at the time because I was at the DOT in 2006 and I didn't do anything about it.
Well, I will tell you, the last show I was on, I think was when we were talking about homelessness, and there was a homelessness in Hawaii crisis report that came out. What was it, Chuck, the producer, in 1960, 70?
Exactly.
And it was crisis in Hawaii homelessness. You know, so it really has to do affordable housing. So it really does have to do a lot with the sort of the political climate,
Absolutely.
The population, where are they,
Yep.
and the organization you're working with, and the people that you're working with. I mean, what is is there that sense of urgency now? Does it feel different with the people that you're working with, say even from 5-10 years ago?
Oh, absolutely. I think the fact that there's, kind of just bodies focused on climate change at both the state and city level, and all counties have some level of sustainability coordinator, focusing on this effort. That's a totally different landscape than 5 years ago, right? And something I wanted to bring in is at the university with the Institute for Sustainability and Resilience that I run there. One of the things we recently did was take kind of this learning trip to figure out what other cities are doing, right? And the places that we visited, just to relate that to what Ed's saying in terms of are we going to elevate roads or move roads, right? So we went to Miami Beach in particular, because they're an example of a place that's already raised roads several feet in order to deal with chronic flooding, right? So we wanted to actually go and talk to their engineers and their planners that designed and built those roads, and it's a success story, but a mixed success story, right? There's trade-offs involved in it too, and it's so the road's dry. The mayor used to be able to kayak down the road at high tide, and that's no longer happens, right? So the road is dry, and from that perspective, it's a success story. But they didn't sort of get all the coordination done and weren't able to lift the under the road infrastructure as well. So now they're going to have to go back and do some of that work, right? So there's the things we can learn from other places that are facing some of the same problems. And Charleston was interesting because they've developed this whole sort of like communication system around nuisance flooding, right? So if it's like 0 to 6 inches, they put up like, a certain color and tell people like, you can still walk through it and it's okay to drive through it.
How do they alert them?
It's like, there's an app and they put it on the news and it's like, okay, this is, passable, but a problem,
Interesting.
This is, and then it's, above a foot, it's, please don't drive through this. This is going to be, right? And it's a daily alert that people pay attention to there, right? So there are places that we can kind of see like, okay, that might be us in these places in, a decade or two.
And I think I saw something recently on on Australia and how they're sort of trying to get people engaged with just how severe the situation is there. And it was a weather entity of some sort that now putting out these regular reports just showing the shift and just sort of gauging that in ways that people can sort of grasp what's happening, and just that sort of constant engagement in some way that's easily accessible for people was helpful. So speaking of, when you're trying to gauge sort of an area, I think one of the most obvious right now is Hauʻula, because it's fallen in the ocean. So what's taking a look at that, explain that situation, explain how you're looking at that situation in context of some of these other areas, and what are you working on right now?
So when the state's report came out about the sea level rise increases, we got in touch with UH to start working with them on how we could reprioritize our sites and see how we prioritize them first based on what we need to do in the first 12 months.
Okay.
Then second, the next 12 months to 5 years. Then third, 5 to 20 years, to make sure that we had a tiered approach to everything. For Hauʻula, of course, 6 of the top 10 sites in the state are in that area.
We're looking at some pictures right now.
It's tremendous. So we've known that this has been eroding for a while. We've known that previously, if you looked at this area 50 years ago, there'd be a beach that's 100 to 200 feet extending out from there.
Really? Wow.
It used to always go away and come back again. That doesn't happen anymore. So that ocean is right next to our roadway, and we got to take care of it. Now there's several options we could take. We could put out concrete walls tomorrow. It's going to cost about $30 million per 1,000 feet, and wherever we don't harden, outside of that is going to get eroded away.
Is that what you mean by harden when you look at the report?
Yeah.
We're going to harden these areas. You're talking about concrete blocks.
Yep, concrete walls. So instead of doing something like that, we opted towards a temporary solution that's softer. So we have loose fill rock that line the highways to make sure we protect it from the wave action, but it dissipates the wave action rather than just wrapping it around. It's not as efficient as a beach per se to avoid that energy dispersion or to cause that energy dispersion, but it's a lot better than just putting up concrete walls.
So how much time have you bought with that?
So 5 years.
5 years.
It's a 5 to 10 year solution. It's a cheap solution that we can put in place right away that's going to only last us that 5 to 10 year time frame, but fully knowing that we're moving forward on the plans on the next phase already. So once we put that in motion, once we protected those areas with that, we can start looking at the planning for what comes next. Second, we look at the areas that we could potentially relocate pretty easily to protect it and give us more time to protect it, or look at areas that we could either elevate or relocate. But all of this is tied to land use. So all of this requires us to get together with the communities that are living there, the city, the state, everybody else that has stakes in those areas to ensure that we're making the right decisions before we move in.
And I think that's a question from Carol from Kaka'ako similar to this. Are our state leaders looking at moving people or businesses inland to take pressure off those shorelines?
So first, we got to make sure that we understand what the climate's going to look like. One of the big things that we talk about with our land use people at the Office of Planning, at the city, at the Departments of Planning and Permitting, is we need to get a feel for what the land use is going to look like by the year 2100. And we may not know right now, but we should be able to project back to see what we're looking at for everything. If we really believe that we should move away from the ocean, then we should start those steps now, through our policies in our state legislature, to our actions, to our administrations, to make sure that everybody sees that the government is starting to show what our leadership looks like and where we're going to go.
You know, I wanted to share, kind of related to like these kinds of reports. I mean, so I, as an educator, I'm always excited to look at that process from that educational lens, and how to involve community, how to involve the youth, how to involve policymakers, people who are implementing policies, but it really be a collaborative effort, because, you know, a recent study that also, or a report that got done for Kauai on the west side was a vulnerability assessment. And I really liked their process because they were very intentionally going out into the community and giving time for one-on-one interviews with longtime residents, having larger discussions, you know, putting up Post-it notes and all these like facilitated kinds of discussions, but it really empowers the community to know that they have a voice and they can come in and they can tell you firsthand what they're experiencing and what they're seeing, and maybe even share possible solutions. And I think through that kind of a collaborative process and iterative process that just keeps bringing people back to the table and have a conversation and have a voice, I think it's so empowering, because you don't want it to just be a government telling a community, well, this is the solution for you. You really want everyone to buy into it, because if we're going to make these changes in Hau'ula, or, you know, put in this 5 to 10 year kind of solution, then it's great that it's something that everybody's understanding, because then when the next phase comes in, you continue to have buy-in. And I think that's why I strongly believe in community, working with policymakers, and just everyone sitting at the table and coming up with these assessments, these plans, and moving forward.
And that really goes to both of you in the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like such a critical point, Malia, and I just want to, you know, echo it. Not, you know, it's on the resiliency side and what are we going to do about adaptation, but it's also on the greenhouse gas emissions side, right? In terms of, if we think about, you know, what I view as, you know, kind of an imperative to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, but wanting to do it in a way that's supportive of communities. You know, what we've seen really recently go on in Kahuku, right, over the expansion of the wind turbines there, right? It shows a lot of, you know, obvious community concern over the proximity of that infrastructure to Kahuku and to the schools. And, you know, I think that if we're going to, you know, expand renewable energy moving forward, we have to have those conversations so much earlier with a lot of input, right? Because it could be that, you know, we can find those areas, like if it's, you know, a little further this way or a little further that way, it might work out. If it's not, then maybe it's a no-go. Right, we have to think about land use planning very comprehensively.
And I love the idea of intentionally going into communities and asking them, you know, straight up, you know, like, do you want this, and what kind of solutions do you have? Like we were talking about earlier, the community is all around Hawaii. You know, in contrast to the government right now, they have 2,000 plus years of research and development experience to be able to determine what's best for the place around them. And combining that with the Western knowledge that the governments and city and counties are able to provide, it really allows for, in my opinion, a much more just and equitable transition from, you know, what's our status quo today to what's best for tomorrow.
And, you know, I need to ask you too, so from your generation, no doubt there's going to be some different approaches, some different mindsets, some different ideas that really are applicable to and need to be a part of the conversation. What are you hearing not only what you're generating, but some of the young people that you're working with. What's bubbling up as approaches and ideas that they have to address and engage in this issue?
If we're talking about climate change as an issue as a whole, the most important issue, and I'm going to echo this anytime I get to, is accessibility. Because it's one thing to go into communities and be like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? But it's another to be able to have a voice in the legislative process.
Okay, that's what you mean. I was going to have you expand on that.
And youth cannot get involved in the legislative process if we keep scheduling hearings while they're at school.
Okay, good point.
Yeah, people who have 9-to-5 jobs can't, do this if they're at work while these legislative processes are going on. And so we have to, find ways in order to ensure that our voices are being heard, our opinions are being noted down in a way that allows us to show up in person, to be able to talk to legislators, that doesn't inhibit our ability to get an A in class. I mean, at Waipahu High School, where I'm a senior, if I miss 5 classes, I automatically fail that class. That's 5 hearings only. And I'm tracking 10 bills right now at the state legislature and 2 at city council. So I will fail.
Have you gotten
Similarly, those of us that live on an outer island,
Also,
right?
Exactly.
Because there was
Making
like
that
about
accessibility,
6
correct.
of us that were on the plane today coming for certain hearings, and kind of connected to, it's not climate change, but there was a bill heard today at the state capitol about lowering the age for voting. So the Hawaiian civic clubs all advocated for lowering the age to 60 to allow for 16 and 17-year-olds to be a part of the voting process in Hawaii, and there has been some pushback. But I really like this point about, all of these things are happening while you're in school, or while, because it's such a quick process. I mean, we get 48 hours and we have to be on the plane the next day, and we have to get testimony.
So have you gotten some feedback as to some changes that are possible, or the legislature or politicians are willing to make?
I haven't had any kind of in-depth conversations with politicians on what they're willing to make. But if I could, think of something off the spot, if we're doing outer islands and we're having testimony, then being able to have satellite or video communication testimony. People meet up at one area, maybe their local city hall, and they testify via Skype or Zoom and be able to talk to your legislators face to face. Because ultimately, and some might disagree, but being able to talk to the person making the decision face to face is much better than them reading some testimony on a piece of paper.
Exactly. Very good point. All right, so let me get to some of these questions, and people are bringing up some different areas, and they want to kind of get your feedback on this. One asking about the issue of the Honolulu airport being so near sea level. Even if there's no plans at the moment to move it, do you agree it's a concern? What's your concern level when we're talking about the airport here?
And not just the airport. If you look at the harbors, it's the same thing. But you cannot raise the elevation of the airport or the harbors without raising the elevation of the roads and the associated access points.
First.
So all of those things got to be considered together as we go forward.
Okay.
So when we move forward on our resiliency plans, it's not a DOT resiliency plan. It's a resiliency plan that ties in all land use and all stakeholders to ensure that we move forward. If I just looked at my road includes your electricity, your sewer, your water, all those associated utilities that are in that.
Right.
So everybody gets affected when that portion gets moved. So in order for us to make our decisions, and the right decisions as we go forward, make it once and move it forward together in that same vision, all of these things, these answers got to come through.
Yeah.
So definitely, airports is already looking at how to make their airport more resilient for the next 20 years to ensure that they have plans set. So when all of these tied-in plans come together, they're set to move.
So I want to get back to some of the other details within this report and how you're moving forward, but I just want to get to one more question. This caller lives in Ili side of the Alawai and has seen the canal overflow, they say monthly, more so in the last 3 years. I mean, would you say, A, that's an example of climate change? And B, is there, say, if you think of another area like that, is that being discussed in that context?
So I would say, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, that's absolutely an example of climate change on how we're seeing more extreme events happening more often. If you look at any of the North Shore areas where we have those bridges that go across that get inundated every once in a while, they're happening more and more often. And we're just seeing it over the last 3 years that these events occur way more often than they used to. For us, when we start talking to people about whether they believe in climate change or not, nobody disputes that they see these extreme events occurring more and more often. What they're disputing is the science on whether or not it's cyclical and it's going to go back to another normal sooner or later. From my perspective, and from most people that we talk to, whether it does or not, why wouldn't we prepare for those extreme events to ensure that we're ready for it in the event that it does? Right?
So moving to the neighbor islands, so when you think about, say, what happened in Hanalei, or how often you see that happen as far as the bridge overflowing, what you work with some of the politicians, you work with the government. What's the mindset now? Have you seen a big change since, say, even what happened on Kauai a year and a half ago? Has that changed the discussion? Is there enough urgency? What's your temperature on that?
Definitely. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of change, and I think positive change, because one, for sure, we're getting more discussions, and we're looking for solutions and implementing and trying it, because we don't know if something's gonna work if we don't try it. I mean, like what happened, what is good for Miami may not be good for Kauai, may be good for Oahu. So even just within our state alone, every island is very different in our geography and just the land use and the ways communities are built. And so, I mean, there may be some similar solutions that can be used on the different islands, but I think...
What are some ideas that have come up? What have you heard?
Well, something that I've been really committed to, that's leading us to solutions, I feel, is training our communities to look at our traditional knowledge and to learn from it, to believe in it, and to also look at, so we look at Aimalama, we call it the moon and the lunar cycles, and trying to empower our Native communities to know that this came from our elders, our kupuna, and they knew, like, if rain was coming, we didn't need to turn on the TV to see what's the weather report. We knew a system was coming and we could prepare for it. But today we're so dependent on that kind of media that, it's just like, oh, what's the weather today? Hey, Alexa, I have this new Alexa in my room now. It's like, hey, Alexa, what's the weather like today? Well, in Hanapepe, it is da-da-da-da-da, And
you make a very good point, because a lot of what happened traditionally really was based on a lot of logic and a lot of just observation as to what's happening, and an assessment based on those observations. So why wouldn't that be integrated into how the policies are put forth? Are you seeing that? Do you feel like enough of that sort of connection to sort of the land, what's happening with the land, understanding how the land changes, and helping that it be a motivator to how you form those policies?
I mean, so for me in my own program at the university, that's a really important sort of, touchstone, and we're trying to integrate indigenous knowledge systems into sustainability thinking and into curriculum, right? And so we're launching a BA in sustainability at UH Manoa this semester, and Introduction to Ahupua'a is, a core class, right? And we really want to think about, what does sustainability mean for this place, right? Because it's going to be different for different places, right? We want to sort of honor that and acknowledge that, and so having different Malama classes into that curriculum, I think, is really important, right? We want our students to know, what does that mean for here, right? And how do we think about these different kinds of ways of knowing, and be able to use that as they, build their own education, right? So.
What else do you want to see, Kavika? What else do your peers want to see, as far as what are they asking for as far as education and resources to be able to stand up and feel empowered?
Yeah, literally on education, I'll give you a story. I was doing a panel at the law school for their summer program with high school students. It was 20 high school students in a room. And on the panel, I asked them straight up, how many of you guys have had a formal education on climate change? One person raised their hand out of 20. And so I think that, fundamentally, before we even go into talking about specific solutions, what the government can do, highway systems, we have to kind of tell them, this is what climate change is, this is the basic science, and now we should build off of here. And we can't do that if it's not a basic part of the curriculum, whether in their middle school or they're in high school. And so I think fundamentally we have to make that a standardized part of the curriculum, or at least make it in such a way that it's built into subjects like biology, like chemistry, physics, maybe even too. And then going beyond that, again, it goes back to accessibility and making the legislative system accessible to high school students that want to make a difference, that want to put themselves out there and make their voice heard, but can't do it because of other systematic issues, like school attendance policies or other things like that. So education and accessibility.
Yeah, I mean,
Excellent point.
what came to mind right now is I get really excited when I hear some of the initiatives coming out of the Hawaiian charter schools, because they are really plugging in, and from the babies of kindergarten up to high school, a lot of the teachers today, even up into our university systems, are looking at field courses, and taking the learning outside of the classroom and really having them, like say at the lokoi'a, at a fish pond, and observing what is happening on a regular basis. They go there, they form a relationship with this fish pond or this taro field, and they're able to jot down in their journal. As a kindergarten, they can do that too. It's like, I'm gonna look at this pohaku, or I'm gonna look for this fish. How many times do I see it? How come do I not see them? What's happening with the water levels? Is it higher today? So the teachers are really creative nowadays, and that's what I love about the Hawaiian charter schools and the Hawaiian immersion schools, is how they're bringing that into our system. And I'm more familiar with those versus the more mainstream DOE schools. But I think that's what's really exciting, because I see a lot of these students coming out and understanding their environment, and having that relationship with the land.
Yeah, and it's because they're charter schools that they're allowed to be so much more flexible, that if they wanted to, let's say with a week in advance, if they wanted to go to the Capitol for the Hawaiʻi Rising event, for example,
Exactly.
they can go out and they can bring all their keiki into the Capitol to make their voice heard, to learn about indigenous culture, to learn about climate science. And so that's what I really love about the charter school system in Hawaii, is that it's just so open and it's so easy to be able to work with them.
So I want to get to you in a little bit about sort of how you're getting the policies implemented, working with the city, but I just want to get a couple of questions here. And it's going to bounce around a little bit, so bear with us. But this is Michael from Kahului. He was asking about going out to the ocean, to the coral growth around the state, if it's been measured recently, how much you're saying that is most definitely an indicator of climate change. What's sort of happening? Has that been, what's the recent reports? Has that been looked at recently? I don't know who
Well,
would that be you?
Rosie on the commission would be the person I would ask.
Okay,
Right?
okay.
So
Rosie, call in. Answer.
So we do have that expertise on the commission. She brings in her knowledge there. But I mean, basically, I think the best sort of summary I've seen of that is the Hawaii and affiliated Pacific Islands chapters of the U.S. Fourth Climate Assessment. So it's a really good compilation of sort of the regional science around ocean acidification and coral bleaching events. And I mean, the statistics are incredibly dire.
Really?
Right? It's
Explain that a little more. How are they describing it?
I mean, it's sort of complete ecosystem collapse of corals in by mid-century potentially, right?
Wow.
I'm forgetting the exact percentages, but when you read it, it just sort of hits you as this is a tragedy. Right?
Yeah, and then I think, knowing that if that collapses, then that whole ecosystem collapses, which then comes back to, I mean, we feed off of these ecosystems.
Is there any debate at this point in time that this is not due to rising sea level temperatures?
I don't think so. I mean, we're seeing
That's pretty
such
much
tremendous,
Yeah.
bleaching related to heat events.
And there's my understanding is there's certain window of time when they can still recover. Are we beyond that in many areas?
I think
Have we
because there's a
lost that window
certain
of time?
Unfortunately, it sort of seems so, right? Because there's a certain amount of climate, even if we stopped all greenhouse gas emissions today, there's a certain amount of climate change that's still baked in, right? It'll take a while for the system to sort of revert back. So even kind of just the projections with the expected warming from today's emissions are pretty dire for ocean acidification.
Well, I don't want to make everybody too sad, but I will say I've definitely seen some research and testing out there as far as, I'm trying to remember the name of I think she was a UH professor, I believe as well. There was an area out on the, I'm sorry?
Ruth Gates research.
I think that it must be Ruth, yeah, and she was testing sort of resiliency, different types of coral that are able to withstand at the higher temperatures and sort of then being able to kind of spread for the sake of.
Absolutely, and I think that's like kind of an amazing
coral.
story of Kaneohe Bay and some of the coral that they've been able to test there. And so there are more resilient corals, and the question is, can those be propagated in places? And I think that's kind of the work to be done.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and then I'm going to get to an on-the-spot question. This is a little bit random. So this is Jewel from Manoa. She said, given climate change, is it possible to sustain tourism at 10 million tourists per year? That's kind of the number she got. I mean, are you looking at that? Are we looking at population control at this point in time? Is it something we should be looking at? Is that discussion happening?
I think that discussion is happening quite a bit to see how we've balanced the resources that we have and the economies that it supports. Every year at the legislature and within the administrations, there's discussions on how we manage tourism to ensure that we still are economically viable as a destination, but still protect the resources that we have. Now, that's with or without climate change. With climate change, it gets a lot more difficult because some of the things that people are coming for may not be here by mid-century. Beaches may not be there anymore if we don't take care of it the right way. Destinations that could be affected by associated groundwater rise may not be there anymore. So definitely, I don't know if we'll have to worry about balancing the resources if people don't want to come here anymore because things are gone.
I think we have some king tide video there. You're looking at Waikiki. Okay, I'm going to go to this question from Matt from Kahala. He's laying it out there. He said, if the panel could control the outcomes tomorrow for downtown in Waikiki, and again, we're looking at king tides in Waikiki here, what would be done if you could do it tomorrow? He said, this is what has to be done. I have the money. I have the political will. What would you want to see happen?
So that's the tough question, and this is.
Sorry, Matt, it's a tough question.
And this is why I keep bringing it back to this. When I talk about the $15 billion that it'll take to remove or relocate or elevate.
And we didn't quite go there, by the way. Maybe I should step you back just a little bit to explain a little bit more about some of the options in some of those areas.
Yeah, definitely.
And what it's going to cost. Give a few more details.
Yeah. So if we look at, if we just look at that Haula Kaava area.
Yeah.
That 1.5 or 10 mile corridor that goes through that area. If we look at relocating that roadway, if you stand on the road and look inland behind the houses where the road would have to go, you can see that there's a tremendous steep slopes and a lot of ridges and valleys that go through. So the roadway, Kamehameha Highway in that area is about 90% at grade, built right on the ground. And about 10% of it are structures, some bridges that bridge over the streams that go through. When we move it behind the houses in that area, it's going to flip. So it'll be 90% structure and 10% at grade, just because of the topography that we're at. Or we go through the mountain as a tunnel. So that in and of itself is about $1.5 billion when I start talking about that big number. Again, if we had all the money in the world, we could do it, and we could do that tomorrow. We could potentially move it tomorrow. But if we did, how do we know that that's the right thing to do? We still don't know what the land uses are going to be.
And so I guess that same question applies to Waikiki.
Exactly.
Is what is the not just an answer that's possible if you had all the resources in the world, but what is the right answer?
That's exactly it. So to me, there's a lot of discussion. This is a great time in the legislature and the administration because everybody's talking about this. This is the priority that everybody's considering, this resiliency piece for Hawaii. The discussions are going now towards what information do we need to make sure that we make the right decisions. The great thing is everybody knows what the big problems are, but everybody understands we're not going to focus on the big or making sure that the solutions that we pick are permanently, absolutely correct because we know we got to do something now.
So Ed here talking about the state level, and of course many partners with the city as well, so you working more with the state. So what have you, I think the way that I wanted to ask it was, the policies that you recommend, how do they get implemented? How are you working with the mayor on that? How are you working with the city on that? And have they been supportive? And talk about that a little more.
Yeah, absolutely. So the commission can recommend guidance, right? And we put it out there in the world and hope people are reading it and listening, right? And so the sea level rise guidance was a good example. So within a month, actually, the mayor issued a mayoral directive. And mayors don't actually tend to use that tool very much. it's a little bit like a presidential executive order, right? You can sort of issue it as a directive. And so basically it said, start incorporating the sea level rise guidance into city planning and projects. So we've seen that have immediate effect, right? I mean, this idea of, kind of to Ed's point of like, what does it actually mean to plan for sea level rise of this magnitude for a specific community, right? There's multiple potential pathways, there's multiple potential answers, but it's definitely started that conversation, and we're starting to see it change the shape and outcomes of projects, which, so it's having impact.
Exactly.
And something else I wanted to add there is, the roads are incredibly important access to communities, right? Which is, so a lot of focus is on that. But it's also just what is the wider community itself and the ecosystems around those communities, right? So the beaches, right? If we think about some of these amazing beaches that are going to be lost as a result of sea level rise, if we don't allow them to move, right? Beaches can move if we let them.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I was gonna kind of jump in earlier too, about this money question. If I had all the money in the world, what would we want to get done? And for me, I don't feel like the solution is like we need money to do this, this or that, because I really think it's a mindset, on how we view our lifestyle, how are we living today in this world? What is the impact of, thank goodness we're not drinking out of single-use plastic containers, you know what I mean? Things like that. Maybe like a little thing and a little change that we make in our lifestyle, but it's a huge change when you look at the larger problem.
So we want to go to a little bit to, we have about 5 minutes left to some what everyday citizens can do. But before we do that, there's definitely questions about people who are naysayers, or deniers, or whatever you want to call them, or who disagree that this is being caused by climate change. How do you have that conversation? How do you work with individuals who are just saying, hey, look, you got it all wrong, or we don't agree, or the evidence isn't there? How does that conversation happen? How do you
Ignore them.
that? Huh?
Ignore them.
Well, I think you can't, right? You do a lot of talks.
To me, take them outside. I mean, look for yourself,
What's been
experience it
helpful?
yourself.
When we work with our national partners, we work with 50 states and 2 territories. There's definitely those on the Republican side who cannot whisper the words climate change, and there's those on the Democratic side who push for it and say you must say that this is the cause. Overall, we cannot agree to the language, but we can absolutely agree to what we're observing. None of the directors of any of the states will ever deny that more extreme events are occurring more often. The events that we had in the past, that the stresses to our system are getting worse and worse more often. So we focus on that. Instead of talking about climate change, we focus on resiliency. How do we ensure the safety and the mobility of all of our people in each of our different states? When we can focus on the outcome, on what we want, rather than the cause, it's a lot easier. Now, definitely, everybody can talk about what needs to be done sooner rather than later. And everybody has their opinions on it. For me, as long as we start moving forward on things, and when people start having those small little wins for these to address these different situations, tremendous. She was saying, if you're using cups instead of plastic, awesome already.
And you're getting right to the last question I had here, a caller, agreeing that climate change is an issue, what specific solutions are being offered, some of what we talked about, and feel free to add, and also what exactly can everyday citizens do. So all of you chirp in. We got a couple minutes left.
So let me just talk from the department perspective. For us, we know that
In 30 seconds.
Yeah, so transportation.
Maybe 45.
Ground transportation, the biggest producer of CO2 in the nation. So we're trying to make sure that we minimize our carbon footprint every day. So we started using CO2 entrained concrete to make sure that we put more of it into the concrete and reduce the amount of cement we use because you increase the strength of it, which further reduces our carbon footprint. We started using, went to an ESCO system to make sure that all of our lights on our system are all changed out to LED cutoffs. We cut our energy consumption by 50%. We put in PVs for all of our base yards, and the airports have their tremendous PV systems as well to make sure that DOT reduces our footprint tremendously.
And I know you have more on the list, but I want to let everybody chirp in a little bit. So so what's on your plate right now, and something that 30 seconds that you want that everyday citizens can think about?
Yeah, for Hawaii specifically, and especially Oahu, one thing that we can all work on right now is the passage of Bill 25. What Bill 25 is going to do is it's going to mandate that we switch in new buildings from gas-powered water heaters to solar-powered water heaters. That will significantly decrease our dependence on fossil fuels. And then it'll mandate that 25% of all parking spots on new residential buildings have EV-ready infrastructure put in, so that when people eventually all drive electric vehicles, then we'll be able to have that.
I want to make sure everybody gets about 30 or so.
I'll build on Kavika's point. So, just in terms of like greenhouse gas numbers and amounts, right? Transportation is huge. Within the state, air transportation is about half of transportation emissions, and ground is the other half. And light duty vehicles, so what we all drive around in terms of cars, trucks, vans, is 90% of ground transportation emissions, right? So, switching to electric vehicles and making sure they're powered with renewable energy, as well as just supporting land use changes that let people walk and bike is
And
huge.
I got a teeny bit of time left for you.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up land use. I think the thing that comes to mind for me is to empower our people to aloha aina and to really be committed to protect our aina and to do what is right for our land here.
Best way to wrap it up. All right, thank you all of you for joining us tonight. McKenna Kaufman, Director for the University of Hawaii at Manoa Institute for Sustainability and Resilience. Kavika Pegram, Waipahu High School Senior and Hawaii Organizer of the U.S. Youth Climate Strike. Ed Sniffen, Deputy Director, State Highways Division, and Malia Nobriga Oliveira, Director of Lo'i Ani'au, Maka'ala Ani'au. All right, next week on Insights, another difficult topic, suicide prevention, what everyone should know. Please join us then. I'm Laurie Amata for Insights on PBS Hawaii. A hui hou.